All right, so we talked about how you can protect your personal assets, getting a dragon through a trust, and then also an LLC is another form of personal asset protection. But for companies specifically, once you get bigger and you build assets, you build different brands, all this types of stuff, you've got all these different assets within your company. So do you have some insight on how people can protect the assets that they build as a company? What are your thoughts on that, Paul?
Yeah, so with a company, it's similar to personal asset protection, right? If you have this entity and it's being accused of doing something wrong and it may have to pay, right, an exorbitant amount of money, right? Anything that's inside of that company is fair game, right, for a creditor to collect on. That company, supposedly did the wrong. That company's assets are at play. However, if you have multiple companies, you've now made it harder for a creditor to come after you because now you have multiple businesses, and technically the one that did the wrong is the one that's in play. The argument goes to the other ones were not involved in that. So what do I mean? Let's say you have a product that caught fire and somebody's coming after your business. They can go after your inventory. They can go after the cash in your bank. They can go after your intellectual property. You might have a valuable trademark, a valuable patent that's generating tons of revenue for you. If it's all in one bucket, that whole bucket's fair game. So somebody can come in and claim all of those assets and collect against those. You're out of luck. However, if you have a separate intellectual property holding company, so like your IP, your trademarks, your copyrights, your patents, sitting in a separate bucket, well, that IP company might have been licensing the rights to the manufacturing company or your operating company. And all of a sudden that IP company didn't have anything to do with the incident that caused the fault. Now, that's not to say that lawyers won't make arguments that there's some relationship there. None of this stuff is bulletproof. But again, it goes back to this idea that we're trying to create leverage here. We're trying to create legal arguments. We're trying to give you a legal leg to stand on to say, personal injury lawyer, you can come after us, but hey, we've got this fortress set up. We've got an IP holding company. We've got a FinCo, a financial company that does all of our banking and finances. We've got a separate operating company, a manufacturing company, a real estate holding company. And I know it's exhausting. And believe me, we don't tell every client to go and do that. It's to the scale of your business. But, there's a lot of good reasons why companies should have an IP holding company anyway, or a holding company on top of their structure. We're talking about a few $100s extra a year per company. I mean, when you are taking your business seriously, when you are at that point where you're taking your Amazon business seriously, I used to work for a company called General Electric. Have you ever heard of GE?
Yes, only from the stock price going down.
Yes, I used to work for a company called GE.
You were when they were going up.
Yeah, I was there when they were going sideways.
It's still a great company.
It is, and they make good jet engines that get us to great places, and I appreciate that, and I love GE. But GE, actually, one of the things GE was very famous for, and you can actually Google this, it was in the New York Times, we were very famous for paying zero tax. So when I was recruited to go to GE, and it was really cool because you're like going to the New York Yankees of tax lawyers. You were like known as the best. But GE is notorious. Everybody in the sort of tax legal world knows this, for having like 2,000 entities. I mean, it's nuts. Wow. These companies do this for a reason. They have entities all over the place. I mean, airlines have different entities for, the regionals are oftentimes separate companies, but they'll have different entities for different airlines, different to create asset protection. I mean, companies do this all the time. It's sort of common sense. There's tax reasons, there's asset protection reasons, there's legal structure reasons, but to have a basic IP holding company is really an easy one. It's an easy one also because of Amazon's terms and conditions. I actually strongly encourage people to consider using an IP holding company because stay tuned for that reason. We'll talk about that later, but it's just an argument. And when you don't have arguments, you've just made it so easy for the opposing counsel to basically come after you personally. Again, you have an insurance policy. I sound like a broken record. You have an insurance policy. It's worth a couple $1 million. I told you about the burned down house, $30 million. Nobody died. It was just a burned down house, not just, it sucks, but $30 million. Okay. Most people don't have $30 million policies. And if you don't have a $30 million policy and they want $30 million and you're worth a few million, right? They come right through, right? But if you have a good personal asset protection structure, you have a good corporate structure, you've got multiple entities, you've just created legal arguments to make the lawyer take a deal, take a settlement, hopefully a settlement that's not in excess of your policy limits or somewhat in excess, but not a lot, but you have legal leverage because really these cases don't go to court. Right. Very, very small percentage of cases go to court.
What is it, like 2% maybe
it's go? Something like that. I don't know what the latest is, but it's an insignificant amount of these cases go to court, right? They always settle. I love having legal discussions with sellers about right and wrong. And I always say, do you want a lawyer or do you want a law professor? Because as a law professor, we can debate the theory all day long. But as a lawyer, let's be pragmatic about what the realities are, right? going to trial, years of legal back and forth appeals. I mean, that's not going to happen. So that doesn't really play into the sort of the dynamic of the discussion. But yeah, I mean, you're not going to go to trial. And a personal injury lawyer, listen, they get paid on contingency fee. If you don't win, they don't get paid. So, the harder you make it for them, the more work they have to do, the more risk you put into their profile of a case, the more likely they're going to take the settlement option at the lower amounts, because it's risk, it's a cost, right? To litigate these cases, it's a lot of money. And so that's why we do it. We want to make it expensive. We want to make a deterrent for those guys.
Okay, so summarizing this up, basically, as companies get bigger, you have more and more assets. And what companies do, like the asset protection, is splitting those pieces up so that if one goes down, it doesn't take down the whole castle, basically. And then you've got insurance policies, you have holding companies, you have
operating company, manufacturing company, an IP company. We used to call this my law professor called this the submarine effect, right? Like, if one part of the submarine is breached, you can seal it off and the ship can still withstand. That's why you do it. You're compartmentalizing assets within the company. It takes work, but I'm not about to tell a young person starting off that they need 17 companies, but if a person's doing 8 figures, you got to start to get real, right?
Yeah, definitely. If you got something to protect,
if you got something to protect,
because this could go on infinite. I mean, you probably spent your entire life when you were working for GE. How many people do you like roughly? I don't know if you could say, but there's probably dozens of people all just for one company working in this area of corporate protection.
Corporate law? I don't even know. I was in the corporate tax litigation division, and I know just in the tax division, we had like 700-800 people. Legal department is massive. And, I'm here speaking with you because I love to talk about what we do and I love what we do, but we are a team of lawyers. So, I have a team of asset protection specialists that I work with who are my lawyers in the asset protection space. And this is all they dream about all day. They love this stuff. They really stay up on this all day long. And I love it too, because it's so important. And I'll tell you what motivated me in the asset protection space was working with a lot of sellers who were getting tax bills from California, for amounts of money that they couldn't ever afford. Were asking me, am I going to lose my home? And my immediate response was, do you live in Florida? Why Florida? Because Florida protects your home. But aside from Florida and maybe a few other states, these are strategies that could help you in a situation where you have a runaway tax lien. And then believe me, I don't think these people owe the California tax and we're fighting it and all those things. But, the fear is real. If you're not a constitutional tax lawyer for a living, you get a scary bill from the state of California for $1 million. Right? It gets real. And so, it's a wake-up call to say people need asset protection in their life if you have things to protect. I was telling you about one a little while ago who, they came to me because they thought the biggest threat to their assets was California. And then I found out that they own Airbnbs and a warehouse in their own name, and they're renting those to their business. And I'm just like, well, that's probably the biggest threat to your business right now, or the fact that you're renting a warehouse in your own name to your business. So all the employees who work in the warehouse now have a direct litigation line right up to you personally. So how you structure things is so important. So, asset protection is, there's different levels of it, but it starts with just good disciplined structure and not, going on the internet and choosing LegalZoom, because it's just making it easy. I know it's cheap. I know it's convenient, but it's really not that much more expensive to have it done right. And it's a heck of a lot more valuable when it's done right. So whether you use our firm, my colleagues, or any asset protection lawyer, all I'm telling you here is go see an asset protection lawyer. Just go talk to a lawyer who knows corporation law and knows asset protection and get it done right, because you're wasting your money on LegalZoom. You're going to have to do it again anyway when you get real. So that's my 2 cents. I'm going to stop right there.
All right. Well, that was wonderful. And I'm going to end it with an analogy. If it's wrong, throw it off. But it's kind of like if you have a country, it's like having your army to defend you. People don't use the army often and they don't go to war, but there's a use. It's like a deterrent. That's what asset protection is somewhat like. We've got an army. People don't go to war. They just like, okay, fine, negotiate.
Right. And don't raise an army of cats, because you'll have to replace it with an army of people. As cute as that would be. I mean, an army of cats is adorable, but it's not going to do you a lot of good if you have to go to war.
You want the army of dragons, Paul.
Yes. You want the army of dragons.
Make sure you got a dragon protecting you. All right. Thanks, Paul.
You bet.